podcast role. Welcome in.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcast Roll Network. Hello, Jamie.
Happy New Year, Peter.
Happy New Year.
It is 2026. We are all, in this family, we are all very hopeful for a better 2026 than 2025. My entire friend thread has talked about that was a dumpster fire. Could we please have a better year this year?
Yeah, I think that seems fair. I've been talking to lots of different people who are trying to take the approach of be more spontaneous or to definitely engage in more like productive and positive talk. Those who are trying to maybe turn away from social media and have more like personal contact and connection with others, do more creative things. So I think that people, while they didn't call it a dumpster fire that I've been interacting with, would totally agree. Okay, that was interesting. Let's move forward with something better. And so actually, if it's okay, maybe I could share with you something that's going on in my life.
Yeah, I think it's really sharing with the audience more than sharing with you.
I know, exactly.
Go ahead.
To create this facade that like you and I don't talk like all the time. So here's something that's interesting. I have a friend, his name's Andrew Graybow, and he said to me something about what would your 8-year-old self, or if you're making a decision, how would your 8-year-old self interpret this decision, and how would your 80-year-old self do you project into the future might look back and see how this decision came about and what would you say in the future. And the decision I've been trying to make is, I've really enjoyed having this opportunity over the last now almost 5 years to step out of the day-to-day leadership work and to sort of share what I've learned and keep learning with others and coach and advise and all those kinds of things and write 2 books and obviously to do this podcast, for which I hope will continue to do. So I'm really dragging this out because it's so exciting. But I decided that one of my life goals has always been to work at an international school. And as I am looking at my life and my circumstances, and I'm thinking to myself, if I don't do that now, when will I do it? And so I followed Andrew's sort of advice of what would my 8-year-old self say? My 8-year-old self would say, what an adventure. You should go do it. Like spontaneous and exciting without any thought of 8-year-olds think they're going to live forever. And my 80-year-old self, I imagine, would say, if you don't do this, you will regret that you didn't make this decision to go try and work internationally with some amazing people. And so an opportunity has come forward at the Colegio Jorge Washington, COJOA is how they refer to themselves. And it's in Cartagena, Colombia. And I am going to be their head of school for their elementary school starting this summer. It's a 3-year position. And I got to go meet I went down there right before the holiday, met some amazing teachers, amazing students, the kids were really sold it. The elementary kids, the older kids, met parents, took a tour of the city and just fell in love. And so I'm going to be starting there. And I think my 8-year-old self would be really proud of me. My 80-year-old self is going to be saying, I'm glad that you didn't have any regrets. So I don't know if I have a New Year's resolution or a phrase for the new year other than embrace it, get excited. And actually, I know I'm doing most of the talking at this initial part because I'm working through sort of my thoughts about this. But we have a guest today, Elena Aguilar. And she is a tremendously well-known leader and coach. And I feel really privileged that I'm announcing this new job in the same week that we're going to be talking about her and talking with her, because she really talks about that sort of like being vulnerable or like focusing on that internal resilience, right? Or she says, be present. Don't think about trying to fix everything. Slow down, be present. And for me, I want to be present in a world and still provide and guide and share what I've learned, and then to continue to learn with those who I'm going to get to work with, building that capacity through this transformational work. And so the last thing I'll say is that the school, its whole focus is empathy and service learning, that's me, or at least how I would hope that people would see me. And I'm really excited about it.
I'm so glad. Can I make one comment before we jump into Elena?
Before I continue to dominate the conversation, he's on Zoom with Jamie and did he just put him in a breakout room? He
did. There was a moment of me just waiting. But every time you mention Elena, I can't help but think of Romancing the Stone.
Oh my God. My brother said the same thing. He goes,
Oh my goodness. I'm like,
yeah.
you're like,
Douglas.
yeah, exactly. Cartagena. You're looking for the stone. You're looking for the stone. Oh my goodness, so gracious. Everything that comes to mind. This is just dates me perfectly. I can only think of that city in relation to that movie. That's the entire context that I have.
You'll have to come visit.
I will for sure. I've got 3 years. This is I don't know. It's interesting, the concept of your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self and anything related to regret. I never really think of it. Like, I try not to anyway, to think about it related to regrets, but rather what are the benefits and detriments that any choice that you make have? What did you get as a result of that choice? And what did you miss out on as a result of that choice? And that's
it's like my 80-year-old self is looking back and saying, look at these amazing people that you've met, these relationships you've formed, these connections that you have, the new learning that you made. It's made me a better 80-year-old than, and maybe I just package that all up into, I would have regretted not having had those experiences and learning potentially. I don't know.
I do wonder, though, too, that the Peter who you are now, like, maybe it's a question, based on who you are now, what joy does this opportunity bring to you? When you see this opportunity, what joy does it bring?
Yeah. So I read this book, From Strength to Strength, right after I retired from the superintendency. And it was an incredibly helpful book because it really helped me think through the first period of one's life. You're building towards something, and you're trying to create your legacy to some extent. And then the second part of your life is about how do you share what you've learned and continue to grow, but not feel like this intense pressure to build. And so when I was interviewing, they asked about, do you see this as stepping back from the superintendency to essentially taking the principalship? And I was like, I think that there are leaders at every level. And when I think back to where I had great impact in terms of relationship connection, teaching and learning, it was at the principalship. And so this will bring me great joy to be able to jump back into leadership in a way that really honors what I loved about being an educator. And while I felt like I did the superintendency well and served as a civic leader, my joy, I think, is in this area of teaching, learning, development, and relationship. And so I hope that answers your question. I think that's what's going to bring me joy.
I'm so glad. I think that this is as much, regardless of whether your 8-year-old or your 8-year-old self would say anything, I think this is as much as a present Peter choice as it is a reflection from the other side. This is who you are now and what you've learned along the way. And this is the thing that's going to bring you some amazing, joyous experiences to add to your life. And so that's wonderful. That's exactly what you should do then.
Thanks. Why don't we jump into our conversation with Elena Aguilar? But before we do that, I do want to pause on something that you're going to hear Elena emphasize, and that's that real leadership isn't about fixing everything, that it's about creating the conditions for growth. And that's why I appreciate today's sponsor, IXL. Instead of overwhelming educators with more tools or more pressure, IXL, it provides clear, meaningful insights that help teachers respond thoughtfully to their students' needs. And so as students practice, IXL adapts in real time. It creates personalized learning. It helps teachers plan to support growth. And I guess it's really no surprise that IXL is used in 96 of the top 100 school districts with research across nearly all 50 states in the U.S. And so if you want a platform that supports growth for students and educators, visit IXL.com/imperfect to learn more. All right, you're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiepelman.
And I'm Jamie Almansan, and we'll see you on the other side of the interview with Elena.
Today on An Imperfect Leader, our guest is Elena Aguilar, a highly respected author and the visionary behind Transformational Coaching, a coaching model based on the development of the whole person. And with 8 best-selling books, including The Art of Coaching and Arise, Elena shares her expertise in education and leadership and offering practical coaching strategies for superintendents and leaders. And if that weren't enough to keep someone busy, Elena also hosts her weekly podcast, the Bright Morning Podcast. Elena, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you. And I love the title of your show because I think it gets right to the point of what this whole thing is about, which is imperfect.
I love it. Yes. There's a distinction I try to make between incompetent and imperfect. That's a whole nother show. But we're here in terms of embracing our imperfection. I am So thrilled to meet you. My mentor, for one thing, Linda Henke, incorporated your in-person trainings on transformational coaching conversations as a core part of her human-centered leadership model. So when I told her I was talking to you, she was really thrilled. And then as I prepared for our conversation, I learned that you spent 19 years teaching and leading in the Oakland Public Schools, so OUSD, and I taught there too. So having taught at Allendale and E. Morris Cox, serving as an assistant principal at Garfield under an amazing principal, Ina Harris. But I also learned that we share a friend in Angela Aquino. And then I texted Biet Wen, a friend of mine who I taught with at Garfield. And he said, I think I once overheard her say, if I can put up with coaching Biet Wen, surely others should benefit from my experience. I think I'll write a book.
Wow. I loved coaching Viet. He's an incredible leader. It was
amazing mind.
To me, it's an honor to coach any leader and to be a witness in that way to someone's growth and vulnerability. And so many of the leaders that I coached, and I coached far more leaders than teachers, but unfortunately, leadership coaching is not as prevalent as instructional coaching. But so many of the leaders I coached said pretty much the exact same thing, which was, this job is so lonely. And then something along the lines of, you're the only person that can really talk to about all of this stuff. And that was like, yes, so because you have all those confidentiality issues, so you can't, you're really not supposed to go home and process with your partner. And
nor is it fair to them. It's just not fair.
It's not fair to them. They're not your coach. What you need and deserve is a coach. And you can't talk to colleagues. You can't talk to your supervisor in the way you can talk to a coach, where you can say all the things and your coach continues to see your potential and listen to you and be there with you in the mess. And so for me, it's been an honor to coach every leader that I've worked with, including Viet. He was an incredible person to witness.
Yeah, and wicked funny. So I imagine your sessions were pretty hilarious. But when I was in Oakland, and I really appreciate you using the term coach and possibly distinguishing it from mentor, because I felt like I had a lot of strong mentors. But when I was an English language development coach, I can't say I was a great coach. And I wish I had learned how to sit with a teacher, how to guide them, how to be a part of their continued growth. And you have expressed a profound love for coaching. And you've even said you find yourself blown away by how well transformational coaching works, even witnessing significant shifts in deeply held beliefs, for which I'm always interested in. How does one really begin to help shift one's sort of those mental models? But really, for my first question for you is, for our audience, many of them aspiring and practicing superintendents, leaders who are grappling with immense challenges. They're trying to lead in everything from budget. The budgets they set have been fundamentally just turned upside down by the federal government. Yeah. The approaches that they're taking around equity work and the importance of trying to close, whether they're called achievement gaps or whatever, but really looking to how do you create a community where every child is valued and honored, where leaders have the ability to innovate. And all of these things, I'm sure, in those leaders that you're coaching or your team that is coaching others, find themselves trying to just navigate a really uncertain time. And I'm curious, what's an approach that you've been helping them to think about?
The through line, the commonality, which is exasperated in different times of our lives and under different conditions, has to do with agency and power and a sense of power. And what is happening in this country and in the world right now is, in some ways, a context in which many of us feel less powerful and more afraid and more overwhelmed. And the go-to when you're feeling that way is go farther and deeper into your sphere of control. Identify what's within your control, what's within your influence, and then start in the area that is most within your control to have an impact on, and then move out. Because by starting with what's most within your control, you are deepening your resilience, you're honing your skills, you're refining your abilities, and you can take that out to tackle some of the bigger challenges. And so my messaging to leaders these days, my injunction has become not just really just start with yourself, but go back to yourself and go deeper into yourself. And actually what you can do that will probably be of greatest benefit to all those around you and to the world is attend to your own healing. So Bell Hooks said, I will not use the exact language, as you will understand in just a moment, but she used the exact language. She said, if you're effed up and you're leading a revolution, you're going to have an effed up revolution. So we bring who we are. And if we are trying to create equitable schools where everyone gets what they need and deserves every day, if we are trying to create communities that are characterized by kindness and curiosity and compassion, but inside of us, we are a big mess. We're not kind to ourselves. We let our inner critic say whatever it wants to say 24/7. We're bringing that out into our communities, into our world, into our families, so I have been talking more and more to leaders, to whomever. It's not, these messages are relevant outside of education, about knowing yourself, attending to yourself, healing the wounds that everyone carries. And it's not like we have to do all of that before we go out and lead. We can do it spontaneous.
Yeah, no, what I sense you're saying is if you are allowing yourself to be untethered, right, then, and you haven't reestablished your anchor of who you are, what you believe, your values, and how you're going to approach any challenge, then you can't, as a leader, be that support for others. If you're unanchored and untethered, then you will drift along with everybody else as you just try to tackle each issue as it approaches. Does that work as a metaphor?
It does. I think I'd push it a little farther. It's
Please.
Like you're actually creating harm by not, and I would say it's more than re-anchor. It's actually get into the roots and see what's down there, what creates the disanchorment. That's not a word, but what is it that creates the spinning, the overwhelm, the saying yes to too many things, the inability to delegate, the tendency to revert back to hierarchical behaviors? Like, where does that come from? How can we get really curious and really kind to the origins of that, so that we're not just like putting on a Band-Aid when what we've got is a major rampant virus? So when I think about transformation, it really is about getting to the roots. It's not about, yes, I can teach you hundreds of strategies, and coaching is strategies. You don't have to be a coach to engage coaching strategies. We can use them with anybody that we are trying to help grow or be more reflective or make different decisions. But I'm not interested in just strategies so that we can see technical shifts or compliance. I want to see like the deep core fabric of humanity.
Right. Yeah. The peeling back, the finding out, if you say fear, then what are you afraid of? If you're talking about control, why is control the approach that you believe to be the reason why? Yeah. So that's really interesting. You've spoken about hope and optimism though. And I'm wondering what might be an example of a deeply affirming moment that continues to fuel your hope and optimism for what's possible in schools. This is a time where all of us are looking for that. We're looking for what is the message I'm going to bring to my school, to bring to my community, to bring to myself, that the work that I'm doing is the right work and will be valued, at least in the long term, as history looks back on our actions.
Yeah, there's some paradoxes in there.
Yeah.
That I think I want to just acknowledge. In some ways, where I'm at right now with this question of hope and optimism is it's really about what we're doing and who we are being every day. It's about how we're showing up. I'll read you a quote by Joanna Macy, who is an incredible writer, leader, which has really spoke to me. And she said, this was in an interview on the show On Being, she said, the biggest gift you can give is to be absolutely present. And when you're worrying about whether you're hopeful or hopeless or pessimistic or optimistic, who cares? The main thing is that you're showing up, that you're here, and that you're finding ever more capacity to love this world, because it will not be healed without that. And that's just been like in some ways that has been really guiding me in terms of my job is to be really present with what is happening. And that means right now being really present with people's fear and anger and grief and hopelessness. And there's so much power in actually, it doesn't mean inaction. It doesn't mean that we're not going to do the things we need to do or make the decisions or activate the leadership capacities to help us create strategic plans that might help us meet the needs of kids. But it means in that moment, we're activating our deepest humanity to be present with what is.
Yeah. Acknowledging the anxiety, because ignoring it, don't become paralyzed by it, but acknowledging it as a way to then be able to take that next step forward. I think of the zone of influence that you referenced earlier in the conversation in terms of, okay, so to what degree can you take one small step forward before you sometimes have to maybe even take a retreat back to that home base and then take that next step out to some point realizing that your zone of influence has grown considerably.
I think there's a lot of hope in the way ordinary people show up every day with each other. And in those moments of connection and of kindness, as long as we can stay connected to our humanity, I feel hopeful. And it's that all those moments in the hallway where you pass someone and they actually pause for a moment and they say, how's your son doing in college? Like, how's his first semester going? It's those moments of
seeing each other, really being with each other. That makes sense. I've been involved in a number of communities of practice with leaders who, when they're together, find great comfort in being together. It's when they return back to their buildings in sometimes a very lonely job that they have to be reminded that it doesn't always have to be so lonely. Some of the decisions are lonely decisions because you're the leader. However, the culture and the climate that you curate can absolutely be through that human connection. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And creating culture is within the sphere of influence of leaders. That is their job, I would say. In fact, it may even be very close to the border with control. That's the job of a leader, is to create culture. And I always think about Peter Drucker's quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah, it's culture first, culture.
That's right. Our guest today is Elena Aguilar, a writer, leader, teacher, coach, and podcaster. Elena, in the leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension called nested patterns. You've referenced a few of them in terms of compassion and care and empathy. And inside one of the dimensions is that question of how do we want to be together? And empathy and compassion and a growth mindset live there. And it's where human centeredness lives. It's where avoiding the impulse to make quick decisions lives. And so you talk about this too. You highlight that deep listening requires presence and avoiding the fix-it mode, enabling clients to find their own solutions. So for superintendents who are constantly tasked with complex problem solving and decision making for their entire district, how can they cultivate and practice this profound level of listening with their multiple stakeholders? Because you've got your internal and your external systems that they have to manage. So I'm just curious, maybe one of the ways that you help leaders slow down, because everybody wants them to make a quick decision, but how can they slow down and really take that time to understand and get a real beat on what's happening in their system?
Slowing down is a practice. It's a skill. It's not something that is valued or validated by dominant culture. It's not something that we think that other people want us to do sometimes, because leaders often perceive real or unreal, like perceive other people as wanting quick answers. And so it's really complex to know how to slow down, when to slow down, how to know in that moment what is needed. I often say, I tell this story. So I started teaching at Stonehurst, which was...
I know Stonehurst.
Yeah. And my first year there, I had an incredible principal, and I often think about our school flooded with sewage a couple of times. And I often think if I had gone down to her and told her, like, my classroom is flooded with sewage again, and if she had looked to me and said,
well, let me think about that.
Feel about that. I'd have been like, fix the problem. Don't ask me how I feel about it. Fix the problem. No. So yes, there are times when a leader needs to respond with action immediately. And there are times when a leader needs to say, tell me more about that, or help me understand the problem from your perspective. Or I'm curious what are the solutions that you've come up with? I often talk about when you are a leader and you want to use coaching strategies, you not only need to know when do I switch hats and put on the coach hat or put on the boss hat, but when and why. What are the indicators for which I may take a coaching stance? And then you have to tell the person, sometimes you have to tell the person, I'm hearing you're describing a problem going on in your building. And I actually want to pause for a few moments before I share my perspectives. And I want to perhaps help you think through this with the intention to help you continue developing as a leader. So coaching is a stance we take when we are committed to helping someone grow as a leader, as a person. And so listening for when is that moment and then shifting into a deep listening stance. The problem with going into fix-it mode really fast and offering solutions is a lot of the times leaders are responding to the symptom and not the underlying issue. And that's why sometimes as leaders we'll offer solutions and then the other person says something like, no, I tried that. And to me, that's always an indicator, I didn't get enough information first. Or someone will say something along the lines of, okay, I guess I can try that. And I can hear in the moment, and I'm intentionally creating a tone of voice that reflects, they don't actually believe it's going to help.
Right.
Because there's more information. They know their content.
Right. Is it possible there's a third scenario too, where you give the advice, they do it, it works, and now you've somewhat replaced their prefrontal cortex. They don't problem solve because they come to you to solve every problem.
Sure. And that's unsustainable. We're not actually building capacity in others. So I feel
as a principal, I did that way too much. Let me solve this. I'll solve this. And that's demonstrating great leadership. And I'm here and I've got your back. And then I realize I'm holding everybody's problems. I'm carrying all of their issues.
And so in the beginning, when I talked about how I think leaders need to approach these times by really going inward. So when I coach leaders who do that, I'm really guiding them into their underlying beliefs and their ways of being. And so, okay, Peter, let's be honest. What are you getting out of this? What are you getting by the one who has all the answers? Like, that's a human thing. We want to...
Right. And a level of satisfaction, right? Look, I've helped these people.
I have helped these people. I'm important. I'm useful. I am valuable. People need me. All those things that are just human things. Yeah. We've all got that.
Yep.
No, and so in a transformational coaching model, so right there, I would say what I'm doing is applying some of what I know about human psychology. And a coach is not a therapist. A leader does not need to be a therapist, but it's helpful to have some of that framing and context to be able to say, so like, what are the underlying beliefs about your role as a leader? What are the underlying beliefs that you're holding about your teachers and their capacity to make decisions themselves? Sometimes leaders do that because at some point they're like, I just don't trust them to make the right decision. So I need to just tell them and make sure they're doing the right thing. So in a transformational coaching model, we're excavating those underlying beliefs. When we get into ways of being, then we're also pointing towards and getting into the edge of the world of psychology and our psyche and our conditioning and our socialization. And sometimes that's the point at which we just name, there's a lot more going on here that you deserve to unpack. And
that makes sense. I was thinking of the iceberg model of everything above water in terms of actions and then everything below in terms of the behavior over time, the systems that have been established, and then certainly at its core are those mental models. And particularly in Oakland, where we had such turnover in principals and turnover in superintendents, that I think that principals possibly did come in and maybe not think about the value of co-creating with the incredible teachers that were there and so thought that controlling was the way to approach it. And maybe that was the model that I saw. And so when I started as a principal, that was the model that I used until it was actually these incredible veteran experienced teachers who said, what are you doing? Like, we can do this together. You don't have to do this. Work with us. I was so grateful to them for that, to have that opportunity to then learn from them and then with them. And what a difference it makes when you do that work together. I'd like to ask you a question I ask every guest who comes on the podcast. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
Perfection as a concept is absurd and unattainable. And it is, to me, a reflection of dominant mental models and really of systems of oppression that hold a linear aspiration for leaders or us as humans. Like, you are here, get here, like the whole I love rubrics. They soothe my nervous system. I just can think about columns and rows and I feel at peace. But it's a problem because it is a supposition of linear growth and development. And I was like recently fantasizing about creating a rubric for grief. Like, I want to know where I'm at in my healing and with my grief. And I want to know, am I getting in an advanced column yet? Because after this many years of therapy, like, I should be advanced. And I was like, the whole problem is I'm thinking about this as a linear process, and human beings are not linear. Like, we're cyclical. We go through things and things come back. And I think that's the problem with this concept of learning. Like, we're going to have to keep learning, and we're going to have to keep learning, and we're not going to ever be perfect. My last book, Arise, I dedicated to both of my parents. And it was the first book. It's book number 8. First book that I dedicated to both of them. And my epigraph, or the inscription to them, is for my parents whose imperfect love was perfect. And my mother passed away 25 years ago. My father is 85 and still alive. And he kept asking me, like, I don't understand this. What does this mean?
Is this a compliment? Is this an insult?
He was very proud and so excited. But he was like, but what do you mean imperfect love was perfect? And I kept saying, I know and he speaks English, but he's not a native English speaker. So I was also trying to navigate the language difference. And I was like, because there is no such thing as perfect love. And so I was like trying to explain paradox. And I just think imperfection is so perfect. It's so beautiful. It's so human. Like, we are there's no such. And as our culture gets more artificial in some ways, and like all the awful things that we know about social media and the curation of a life, it's not like those filters are not. And it's just
Imperfect is authentic.
Yeah, it's human. It's just like human. And I think we have the hardest time accepting our humanity.
So I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom Project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention An Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
This is Greg Meyer, Jamie's partner at APC Leadership Collaborative. Superintendents know that school principals are the single biggest lever that any school district has for improving student joy and success. Unfortunately, there's very little professional development for the specific things that a principal has to do to improve their school. At APC Leadership Collaborative, we specialize in coaching principals to take on audacious goals, build their leadership skills, and make big improvements in their school. If that inspires you, let's connect and talk about how we can collaborate. Find APC Leadership Collaborative online at apccolab.com.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.
We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. My guest today is Elena Aguilar, a writer, a leader, a teacher, a coach, a podcaster. And in this segment, we ask, just like we do each week, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision they made and then what did they learn from it? Elena, what happened?
Okay, so I'm going to preface this by sharing that I'm offering a slightly composite scenario to protect identities.
Yes. What did my advisor at Mills call it? It was a fictional narrative or nonfiction narrative. So there's liberties that can be taken.
Yeah. So the thing that I realized that is a little bit, I'm going to practice self-compassion, but I have been learning the same lesson over and over again. So I will say, that's why I say it's composite, it's true, it's honest. What happened was I fired somebody, or rather I closed their position and let them go because they were not performing at the levels they needed to perform at. I let them go, and then they responded with shock. I thought I was doing great. How can this be? You never told me. And so that is a summary of what happened.
So this is a juicy example, as Linda Henke would say, because I think that so many of us, we were good teachers and then we became principals. And in some cases, those who are superintendents, they then become superintendents and they're responsible for such a complex system. And in any one of these leadership roles that we have, we are not always, that isn't part of our preparation, is like how to have these conversations, particularly if you're going to close a position and have a really difficult conversation. So I really appreciate you being willing to maybe talk about it a little bit in this composite way. As you look back on this, what would you say was overlooked?
So I'll say what I recognize now, and it's interesting how this makes me feel so squirmy and uncomfortable to have to share, but is I have conflict avoidant tendencies, and it has taken me a long time to learn how to give really specific, clear, precise, actionable feedback, and to not hope that somebody would just get it. And so I did not give this person, or really these people, because I am conflating a number of them, the kind of direct, consistent feedback, which includes in writing all the things that I've learned about and that I have worked with people on giving feedback. Like I could tell, as a coach, I could tell other people how to do it. I could tell them what they weren't doing right. And I still had trouble doing it myself. And that's been a big learning to have to, and part of it was the fear of damaging relationships. And so, of course, the irony is right there, like way more damage to a relationship by not giving clear and direct feedback. And I think I just also want to name that when I'm guiding leaders towards looking at the deep stuff within themselves, or when I shared what we can do is like really understand ourselves, these patterns come out in all the areas of my life. They come out with friends, they come out with my husband. It's like my husband and I have been married for almost 28 years. And I'm really just recently, he's, wow, you're getting really direct and clear. I'm like, I'm learning finally. I'm finally learning how to be really clear and direct.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
I totally relate. I even think about, I have 3 children and my 16-year-old where I just lost my mind recently. And I said something along the lines like, I don't know how to communicate with you. I just tiptoe around you and avoid. And I went, oh, wait, let me take a step back. This is my issue, not your issue. Can we sit down and actually talk about how I'm feeling and like why, because we were just not communicating very well. It was a really unfortunate sort of how I felt as a parent in that moment. And then certainly I also shared the inability to sometimes to have some of those conversations. And then, so what I would do is my pattern of behavior was I would offer support, and I would offer so many. I'd say, oh, read Elena Aguilar's book. Oh, I have this cognitive coach for you. Oh, I want this person to come in and model lessons, which was doing such a disservice to the person as well, because they didn't know what to do, because I was giving them so much to do that only led to further sort of erosion of their ability to do their jobs, and then only accelerated my sort of insistence that this was not the right place for them.
Yeah.
Typically, we ask, what could you have done differently? We ask that because sometimes what got overlooked is a system kind of thing. The system created these conditions that I was behaving in. And then the what could you have done differently is an individual. What could I have done differently? I'm not sure in this situation there is a difference, but I'm curious if I were to ask that question, what could you have done differently? Does something else come to mind?
Oh, definitely. Number one, I had not made expectations absolutely clear. And so when someone would say to me, I thought I was doing what you wanted me to do, and then I was thinking about it, I was like, no, you weren't, but I hadn't made that super clear. And then once I did make expectations really clear, it was about saying, this is what I expected. This is what you did. Here's the breakdown. Here's what needs to change by this day. It needs to look like this. That kind of clarity and specificity and communication, just regular, like, how are we going to track this? How are we going to document this?
When you look back on this sort of this composite of a story, as well as even the individual scenarios, in the end, there's something that each one of us can look back and say, something good has come out of this situation. I have some ideas on what has come out for you in terms of what you've learned and then how you apply it moving forward. But let me ask you, what was something that was good that came out of the situation?
In my team now, I have a small business. I'm a CEO and I have 8 employees, and we are really clear about what's expected. We have all kinds of systems to document and track, and performance reviews and quarterly check-ins and
and rubrics. I know rubrics,
all of it. That's all in there. So there's a lot of structure and system and clarity. But I think that's important. But I feel like I really value humility and empathy. And so this experience keeps me humble. It's like, this is really hard to do. And it requires a lot of our own slowing down and processing, knowing ourselves, digging into the root. Like, I have to dig into the roots of my avoidant behavior. And that goes back to being 4 years old. And so that's my job also as a human. And I accept it and I appreciate it.
What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
Get a really good therapist.
That really is great advice.
Yeah. If you can't find one, or if the modality that they use is not helpful, try a different modality. There's lots of different kind of therapy. Know yourself, understand how the patterns in your childhood and your relationships are just being replicated over and over with all the people around you. It's all we do. We just grow up and keep replicating patterns unless we're intentionally interrupting them.
Yeah, that is such amazing advice. I think about being the superintendent in the Midwest in a deeply divided town during the pandemic. And it wasn't until we got through and back in seat that I really took the time to work on and to get my own therapist and to do that kind of work. It was so important towards healing because I was damaged by everybody cheered educators at the beginning, heroes work here, and then we were vilified. And that was really hard. So thank you. That's really good advice. I really appreciate you reminding people to do that. Our guest today was Elena Aguilar, a writer, a leader, a teacher, a coach, a podcaster, and I hope to say a new friend because this was really just lovely. We are connected through OUSD, but really the reminders about leading with empathy, leading with humility, really digging into our roots, and also a deep reminder, you've given us some frames to think about how to use when we're working with others, but even more than that is just understanding what can I control? And then really working that area because there's so much that's out of our control right now. And what a fruitless endeavor it is to try to control those things. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. This was a really great conversation.
Okay, we're back. This really is the perfect New Year's episode. As we think about the coming year in terms of the calendar year, and certainly as we think about the second half of the school year, as people are coming back and certainly want to keep improving on things, maybe make some adjustments, continue to support their teams and their teachers. So I'm still gushing about it.
I feel in some ways, I think I agree in that, Elena is from where I'm from, right? We're both from the same tree. And the three of us are from the same tree. We're all Oakland people. And
That's right. That's
so
right.
it felt very much, let's get back to where we're from and talk about the schools that we know, the people that we know, and how those have shaped our thinking and our
It
value
certainly
system.
anchored my conversation with her in terms of, there's some credibility in terms of the people we both know, and that they, as leaders, are exceptional people, exceptional educators. I know that you two have a connection through the National Equity Project.
That's right. We both worked at the National Equity Project, and a lot of our approach, both of our coaching approaches, are rooted in everything we learned from the National Equity Project. And so I see a lot of how we do our work, how APC does their work. It's almost similar to what Elena does. I did wonder, I think this is the culture creation, that when you create culture as a leader, you really do, you say it all the time in basically the nested patterns framework or the nested patterns dimension, in that how do we want to be together? The together part is really key there. The be part, everybody bees, everybody is a bee, right? Everybody does their thing. The question is whether or not we do it together, and do we share language? And so her language and my language around coaching are very similar, but are they clear to others? And that may raise this question. When we say slow down, what do we mean? What does that mean to do? Does it just mean don't make the decision right away? Does it mean take more time to think about the decision? And how much time is enough time? What in your mind, when someone says, Peter, let's slow down for a minute, what does that mean to you?
That is a great question. So this really does stem from something that she talked about in terms of this cultivating presence over fix it. And before I answer what I think slow down means, I do want to elevate a message that I heard her say that I think is so appropriate for our audience, particularly at this point in the year. And so that's this idea that we are frequently facing this pressure to provide quick answers, that we're asked to make big decisions. And when I think of this slowing down, I think of it as whether two things. One, it could be those cycles of inquiry. So just respecting that cycle and waiting to the point where you're going to then evaluate, are we making the progress we hope to make, instead of interjecting midway through that cycle and changing path, because that creates confusion, frustration, false starts, all those types of things that really just undermine change. If you're seeking change, or undermine the process or strategy you've put forward, that's what you're working on. I think also slowing down is just a reminder to yourself that as a system thinker, you want to avoid that impulse to make that quick decision. And that really then speaks to, in terms of that nested pattern, or in a different domain of my leadership work, is this idea of harvesting the collective wisdom. So making sure that you're really engaging those who may have been present for a long time, who have tried that approach and saw some success or understood why things didn't go the way that they had hoped they would go. So I would say slow down are those things. And to your point, I think you're right, is that we don't often define those terms. And so then slow down means radically different things to different people. And then that creates frustration when they're like, I thought we were slowing down. It was like, oh no, I thought we were just rethinking. Slowing down meaning we're not moving forward without thought, but we're still moving forward, kind of thing. So yeah, that's interesting.
Whose speed of thought counts, right? At what point is it enough reflection for whom? And that's usually the being clear that we're actually not moving forward till everybody's ready to move forward. But I will set a date at which we can't not move forward, right? That there's also the leadership part of it. The system needs a decision by this particular point, because there's this form that needs to be turned in, or the grant is tied to whatever, all that kind of stuff. It came up more than once, and it had me reflecting on my own coach language and the places where we aren't clear enough about what we mean. When she says strategies, as an example, coaching strategies, I think the word strategy is overused, and we don't all have the same meaning around that. And so she said slowing down is a skill. I'm like,
yeah. Well, but
yes,
here's one of the things that I took away from my conversation when I think about slowing down too, is just to be aware of the context. And I guess what I mean by that is what's happening within this cultural field. For example, maybe there was a natural disaster, or maybe we lost someone who was dear to our community. And so just embracing the humanity also is a way to remind us to like slowing down is important because you have to honor the emotion and the feelings that people are having. And so she had a quote in there. I'm going to read it.
Please.
About being present. And I thought, so valuable as we think about this new year, 2026, as we think about the new sort of semester in terms of being midway through a school year, because I think we get so mired in the work, the technical work, that we forget about the human centeredness of what we're supposed to be doing in terms of being present. So she says, the biggest gift that you can give is to be absolutely present. And when you're worrying about whether you're hopeful or hopeless or pessimistic or optimistic, who cares? The main thing is that you're showing up, that you're here. And I thought, oh man, yes. At the front part of our conversation, I talked about this new exciting opportunity I have. And it was a good reminder for me as I begin this work over the summer in Colombia. And if you remember, I came from Colombia, so I have to now, it's Colombia, not Colombia. Being present, the importance of being in classrooms and talking with kids and checking in with teachers, not as an evaluation, but to be there, to be present, to honor and value, to bless the good work that's happening. So anyway, that was a big takeaway for me. And so I would say slowing down, for me, in this case, it would be slowing down to become part of this community as opposed to inserting my own sort of views on things without fully understanding where I am, who I'm with.
Yeah. I've shared this quote. I love that quote. I thought that reflection from her was brilliant and exactly the kind of leadership that we are promoting. It's what I would describe as a humble leadership.
Yeah.
That you're trying to actually listen and understand the people that you work with around you. It also made me think of the quote that I've used before on this podcast by Kafka about what it takes to slow down and listen, which he called the deep listening. Even that as a phrase is another one of those, I understand what she means. And I'm like, I don't know if people really understand what she means. And the Kafka quote is, you do not need to leave your room. Remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen. Simply wait. Do not even wait. Be quiet, still, and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. The calmness to wait for the world to come to you, to be okay with the level of slowing down that takes. That's the skill. That's the part that's hard. It's practice. What I mean by discipline and practice is I just keep expanding the amount of time, to be honest, to be really blunt and technical. If you've never really thought about this or practice it, don't talk in the conversation with someone else and just keep expanding the amount of time that you do that. The more you do that, the more chance your colleague, the person you're with, the person you love, gets a chance to express themselves and offer freely what it is that they care about. They will be unmasked. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. And it's in that moment that you really see and understand people. But it takes skill. It takes practice.
It takes skill. It takes practice. And it takes a willingness to try to disrupt the value system that exists, particularly in North America, in the US, that bold leadership is valued, and stridently making a decision or making a declaration is somehow a demonstration of leadership. And what you are saying, what Elena has said in our conversation, what I interpret those who I get to spend time with in leadership circles is the real value is in whether it's that quote by Kafka or the Ernesto Sorelli that you repeatedly tell, just shut up and listen.
So true.
Yeah.
It still remains true. It's the thing that maybe I'll bookend the interview here or the podcast here. And that is that if I don't have a New Year's resolution, except I have a New Year's hope that 2026 is much lighter and happier and joyous than 2025 was for me and my family and the people that I'm connected to and work with. But if I have a resolution or a hope for this year, that is that I do a better job of listening to those around me. I keep practicing the thing that I want to be better at, that I create the culture. I model the culture that I want to see. And I don't succeed at it regularly. I don't succeed at it with my own family. And so it's always that practicing, noticing when you don't, being grateful. Also, you know what it also makes me think of? It makes me think of, I think one thing maybe I should work on this, being excited when you do. That my own nervousness around being humble in front of others sometimes diminishes the joy that I take when I'm successful.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm not supposed to describe the success. I'm not supposed to talk about the success. And that being a better listener is really something that I've just gotten better at.
That's fantastic. If I were to end with something that Elena also said, and this would be a way to end our conversation today, is that she says that we should start with ourselves and that we should go back to ourselves, go deeper into ourselves. And she says, and actually what you can do that will probably be of greatest benefit to all those around you and to the world is to attend to your own healing. Yes. And I believe what she's also saying is attending to our own continued development as good people who are trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Interrupt the patterns that you've grown up with that may not serve you and or others. Those are hard things to do. Yeah.
All right, Jamie, this has been grand. I'm so happy to see you again. It's been a couple of weeks.
I'm really happy to see you.
We pre-recorded a number of things and had them sitting in the hopper, and they went out over the holidays. And so it's nice to see you again. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiefelman.
And I'm Jamie Amansan. Please don't forget.
Oh, yes.
Please don't forget to give us 5 stars if you have a chance.
Come on,
to give us a little bit in the new year. In the new year, give us a review and give us 5 stars. We would love it. It helps with the algorithm. And honestly, any comment you want to make,
what's your New Year's resolution?
Yeah, sure. We should.
All right. I'll see you next week, Jamie.
Take care.